look at what we may or may not learn from whatever Mr. Barr does or does not release, is former federal prosecutor Joseph Moreno. Thank you very much for coming in, Joseph, to join us. What did you make of what Barr said today?
Well, two astounding things. One was the surprise that you just covered, which is that within a week, the public, not just Congress, but the public will get at least a redacted version of the report. We knew we would see this at some point. I didn't expect it would be within a week. So that's actually an encouraging thing. By Washington standards, that is light speed. That is faster than anything works typically in this town. Second thing, though, the Attorney General made clear he has no intention of sending a non-redacted report to Congress. And that was something that clearly bothered members of the Democratic Party on the congressional side, where, I mean, he said, look, I'm willing to maybe consider that, and we can have that conversation later. But as of now, I have no intention of giving you the full report.
So basically, the Democrats are still in the position where they have to rely on the goodwill and good faith of a man who is appointed by Donald Trump to release a fair version of a report which may or may not conclude that Donald Trump obstructed justice when it came to his dealings with Russia over the campaign.
We're seeing a limitation in our system here, right? Congress has tremendous investigative powers. But in this case, they didn't control this investigation. This was an investigation done within the executive branch of the head of the executive branch. So Congress is now cannot just reach over into another branch of government and pluck the information out it wants. It has to go through process. Congress says, look, we should be entitled to this. We have broad oversight responsibility. The executive branch says, wait a minute, not so fast. We are co-equal branches. This is no different than any other federal investigation and prosecution, and there are limits to what we should turn over.
So, Joe, do you think it's possible that we will never know whether Bob Mueller's report basically concludes on one side or another whether Donald Trump obstructed justice when it came to the Russia investigation?
I think we will get to the conclusions. I mean, the Attorney General says he previewed those conclusions for us last week when he released his letter. He's saying we will get a further version.
But some Democrats are saying, hold on a second, we don't know if we trust your conclusions.
Well, I think the conclusions will be clear. I think he would have a very hard time redacting those. I think what's going to be heavily redacted is some of the information and the evidence underlying those conclusions. And that's where fair-minded people could say, look, if we can't see what the underlying evidence is, how can we possibly determine if the conclusion was made in a logical fashion? That's where I think the battle lines will be drawn, and ultimately the third branch of our government, the judiciary, will have to step in and make that decision.
What about public opinion in all of this? Because when the report first came out at the end of last month, the headlines across the country said, basically, you know, Trump cleared of colluding with Russia, not so sure on obstruction of justice. Do you think that whatever comes out of the Mueller report now is going to change the public's perception very much of this whole case, this whole investigation?
It is hard to get past first impressions in any news cycle, right? And obviously the
Especially
president...
with news moving so quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the president is very good at controlling the narrative. He is good at that. So, and he has done that these past few weeks. So whether public opinion changes will really rely on the details. What more will we learn when we see this report? How much is available? How much is not redacted? What can we see? And does that make us question...
Which also relies on the public following those details.
Well, sure. And I do think there's a lot of public interest.
Yep.
Whether or not we have the detail there, that's the open question.
Okay. Joe Moreno, thank you very much for coming in to join us. These were fascinating hearings, by the way.